If not in our own house, we've all been to someone's place and seen a massive bookshelf filled with books that have never actually been read. The idea of buying a book has become more appealing than actually reading one. Dust has gathered, the why for buying those books forgotten. It's become a bit of a stereotype, and as funny as that is, it's also quite scary. We all know it, books don't have the same pull as they used to. If you're young like me, they might have never actually had that pull to begin with. And if you're older, you might know all too well the pain that comes from actually sitting down and reading for an extended period of time, especially if it used to be relaxing and now it's anxiety inducing. There's so much value in reading books, probably more than you already know. By the end of this video, you're going to have clear direction and actionable steps for how you can solve this issue in your own life. Because today we're going to dive deep into what exactly is the problem here, why it's an issue that cannot be ignored, how it all happened in the first place, and what we can do as individuals to solve this issue in our own lives. So, why has everyone stopped reading? So I'd just recently gotten out of a bit of a reading slump. I was traveling Japan and really enjoying my time there. But whenever I actually sat down to read, I would struggle. And I mean struggle to read more than 10 minutes at a time. Now you probably aren't traveling right now, but this problem of utter boredom whenever you pick up a book is all too familiar, right? Well, we're not the only ones. Now, the majority of people in the modern world can read and write. Literacy has boomed in the last couple hundred years. This graph shows the literacy rate from 1475 to 2023. Around the 1800s, the percentage of a population that was literate exploded exponentially. While only 1 in 10 people was literate in 1820, that has now been flipped on its head, and now only 1 in 10 people remain illiterate. And this seems great, right? The fact that more people can read and write is amazing. But if that's the case, why aren't book sales through the roof? Why do you not see more people on public transport with a book in their hands rather than their phone? Well, the problem isn't that no one is reading. It's that no one is reading books. But Harrison, if everyone's reading, what's the problem? Why do we need to read books specifically? Personally, I would say it's a problem because I don't have anyone to talk to about the literary genius Pierce Brown is. But as a society, I do think there is something deeper brewing underneath the surface. Think of it like this. Reading books is like a stroll in the park. Reading articles is like riding a bike. Watching YouTube videos is like driving a car. Then watching short form content is like flying through space and time at the speed of light. Now, if you do that last one most often, whenever you rein in the horses or relax a bit and change the speed of your life, it feels excruciating. This inherently means that the wonders of our daily life, the things that brought us most joy and fulfillment, are no longer that. That walk underneath the sun's rays used to be a time of peaceful pondering. Now it's a time spent wondering if the SPF you have on is strong enough to protect you from the heat of the sun. That lovely date night with your partner used to be a time to remember, a time to separate yourself from the stresses of day-to-day life. Now it's become a time that you have to capture and put on your Instagram story. A time filled with, hang on a sec babe, I just gotta pick up this phone call real quick. Or I gotta check the stock market, give me a moment. I can go on and on about how the situations that used to feel magical are disappearing for our constant need for more information, more validation, and more stimulation. Human beings have a bunch of amazing talents not seen by anything else on this planet. One of those things is our ability to hold onto a single train of thought for a long duration of time. This ability has helped us build cities, go to the moon, reach heights beyond the imagination of our forefathers, or more particularly holding on to the thoughts of our forefathers and continuing them through to the finish line. Books gave us a great way to strengthen this ability. The average book of about 300 pages takes about 8 to 12 hours to read. That means for those 8 to 12 hours, we would be continuing one train of thought. When compared to an article that takes 10 to 15 minutes to read, or the caption underneath a short form video that takes 10 seconds to read, there is a stark difference. This difference in ability to hold on to one train of thought shows itself through our children's education, the rapid increase in prescriptions for ADHD medication, and the rise of content creators where their whole purpose is to help those expand their attention spans, build discipline, and overcome overstimulation. Focus is what brings humanity to great inventions, communities to a common goal, families to prosperity and gratitude, and the individual to a sense of fulfillment. I truly believe that our reading habit has such a large effect on our ability to focus, and with reading books decreasing year by year, so is our focus. Also, this kind of blew my mind, but there are now studies that show reading actually reduces stress and cortisol in the bloodstream. Another problem with this ever-increasing lack of books read by individuals in our society is our decrease in empathy. Now, as the rules that govern the social climate change, we have seen a drastic drop in the abhorrent acts that have been caused throughout history. I will 100% admit that. But I have a funny feeling that the individual has become less empathetic. Scarily, we have become so tribalistic with our political viewpoints, and everything is now very black and white, especially in regards to our morality. An example of why I believe our empathy is decreasing is when you read a novel. You get into the protagonist's head. You learn not just their actions, but also what's behind each and every one of them. Their motives and reasoning behind whatever they actualize in reality. This gives you a window through which you can feel how someone else feels, see how someone else sees, and experience how someone else experiences. Empathy, defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Books literally do just that. Now, you can get a glimpse of this through a well-crafted movie or show, or even stories about real people's lives. But when you read a book, you tend to use more imagination to bring the character alive. And you tend to get more information about what's going inside their head than the other forms of media I mentioned earlier. If attention spans are decreasing, people's ability to enjoy the simple things is diminishing, and our empathy is gradually being stripped away and replaced with hollow opinions and division. What will society look like in 10, 20, or 100 years from now? The image I see, and you see too, is quite bleak, isn't it? But there is hope, I promise. We can do something about this, but before we get into how we might be able to change course and fix the mistakes we're making, I need to explain the root causes behind this issue. So while I was doing the research for this video, I came across a post and a comment on a Reddit thread that said, "Why read a whole book when you can watch a video on why one can't read?" I felt this was quite ironic, but also a clear indication as to what the real problem is. It's the damn phones. Now, there is definitely more at play than just our phones, but before we get into anything else, we need to address the elephant in the room. Phones were first invented to try and make the world a more connected place, and a world where we can share our ideas, communicate to anyone about anything, no matter where they are. At the beginning, the world didn't quite like the idea of personal computers. There was a big fear about them taking over the world, or them being used by a maniacal and overbearing government. A future just like the one in the book 1984 by George Orwell. Then, as more and more people started to realize the opportunities and boost in productivity that personal computers gave them, they got used to it. Their fears were drowned out by their constant need for more output. Then, as more companies jumped on the bandwagon and they started to invest massive amounts of resources to get a piece of the pie, the first social media platform came about in 1997. Called 6 Degrees. This platform had a lot of familiarities to the social media you know of today. Members could create profiles for themselves, maintain lists of friends, and contact one another through the site's messaging system. Though there were still addictive aspects to these websites, they were still babies and had a lot of problems like poor optimization, slow loading times, and a lack of features. And after a few iterations of software and a few new social media platforms were gaining popularity, the first smartphone came out, the IBM Simon Personal Communicator. This product was a big flop and it didn't have many sales, but there was an idea that entered the ethos when this product entered the market. Personalized computers that you can take around with you. Personalized computers that can fit in your pocket. The most notable one was the first iPhone. A phone that not only could you interact with using your fingers on its innovative touchscreen, but also had an app store. A place that let developers and coders let their creative juices flow. Most apps were pretty useless at the start, but as time progressed, innovation grew and more money was being sunk into the creation of these apps. Apps like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube eventually came about. They started out as a light-hearted way to share things amongst friends, but after a while, there was a shift. The people behind these apps knew that they were sitting on a goldmine and started investing heavily into learning how to hijack our reward system, pouring millions and billions into learning exactly what made the human brain tick and then exploiting it. Coming back to the present, we all know how addictive these apps can be. Time seems to just fly by as we doom scroll through endless content that we never even remember after the fact. Our brain goes on autopilot. These apps are specifically designed to keep you on them for as long as possible. Even the one you're watching this video on right now. Now, I'm not saying click out of this video. That would definitely hurt my viewer retention and we won't be able to figure out exactly what we can do about this problem. But I still want you to be aware right now as to the true addictive qualities these apps have. When you consume mindlessly, without intention, there is a major side effect. Our brain starts to crave dopamine hits, and quick dopamine hits at that. Books, however, can give you a hit of dopamine, but they will never be able to compete with the engineered and intentional pulls that these apps have on our reward system. I could talk about the ill effects of these apps forever, but I think we all get the point now, so let's move on. Another reason for this madness is there is an increase in demand for media that is entertaining rather than educational. Now, I think there are a few reasons that has caused this mental and social shift. One being the increase in purposelessness and the other being the need to distract ourselves from the pain of everyday life. When you are filled with purpose and meaning, sitting with your own thoughts isn't actually that hard of a thing to do. It can actually be quite enjoyable. But when we lack meaning, it can become one of the most torturous experiences we have to endure. With the rise of purposelessness, we need to distract ourselves from this pain. Entertainment gives us that distraction. And just like all other drugs, the more we consume, the more we need. And the quicker we need it to release those happy little chemicals. Now, I think we can all agree this is a serious problem. And I also think we now know what exactly is going on, the ill effects of this problem and why it's come about in the first place. So let's move on to the more hopeful side of this conversation. What we can do about it. The value of reading a book isn't something that we place over other tasks. And because we have so much to do in our day-to-day lives, unless we prioritize reading, it will never become a part of our schedule. So in order to combat this issue, you need to start prioritizing the act of reading. And after just listening to the benefits reading gives and the disadvantages not reading gives you, this should be a no-brainer. But Harrison, I struggle so much with actually starting, holding my attention and finishing anything I start to begin with. How does prioritizing help if even when I do, the boredom is mind-numbing and I can never find time to read? Okay, that is understandable. The modern man or woman burdened with ever-increasing workloads and the hustle of daily life often finds it challenging to carve out time for reading. We are in a new age, built upon efficiency and monetary growth. This new world and lifestyle doesn't leave much space for the meticulous, patient, and slow-moving act of reading a book. But if you use social media for more than texting, for more than just keeping up with your immediate social circle, you do have time. It's just being spent in unproductive and forgettable ways. And you don't need to be reading a book a week or even 20 pages a day. Start small. Maybe 1, 5, or 10 pages, whatever you can fit into your schedule and isn't too hard for you at the start is progress. And to target the other part of your problem, it being too boring. There is an extreme and quick way to solve this issue, or a more slow and patient way. The extreme is to partake in a dopamine detox. If you don't know what that is, give it a search on Google. The slow way is to be very intentional about forming your reading habit. Have a strategy in place that will guide you down the right path. See what I did there? Because you know, my handle is the right path. Smooth, proud. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I've already made a strategy for how you can form a reading habit and actually stick to it. And it's a YouTube video on my channel. I've linked it here also. And even if you do decide to go down the dopamine detox path, I'd still recommend watching this video after. These videos are a lot more in-depth about the strategies you need to implement, but since you've already made it this far, I will give you a few quick pointers. Number 1 is schedule a reading time. I personally do it just before bed. I find it's easiest for me and it keeps me from staring at a screen just before I go to sleep. Number 2, prioritize reading as something that will give you a sense of fulfillment and growth in your everyday life. Number 3 is always carry a book. Ebooks work as well. I think you can get the Audible app for your phone if you don't want to buy an ebook. So no excuses. Number 4 is use audiobooks to your advantage. Now, while they don't have the same effects as reading does, they are still very helpful. And there are actually studies that are coming out now that show that audiobooks are actually more beneficial in some areas than traditional reading. I haven't looked into that enough to really give my opinion on it, but it's interesting nonetheless. Number 5, start off small. And number 6, start reading multiple books from multiple genres. Now you're all caught up and we have a path forward. If you stick to it and be hopeful that we can make a change as individuals, you will be on the right path. Ciao.